Good morning, gardeners. This is Melissa, and we're here this morning at my home, actually. And I'm going to be building some raised garden beds, and I thought I'd take a video of it to take you guys through that process. And that way you can learn how to do this. If you want to take a look, this is the existing garden bed down here. We built these about 6 years ago, and they're kind of getting rotten and falling apart, and they're sort of irregular size, so I thought this would be a good year to replace them all. So I've been building them little by little. The new garden bed size is going to be 3 feet by 8 feet. You can go up to 4 feet by whatever length you want. I prefer 3 so that I'm able to reach to the middle a little bit easier. So this is going to be the one we're going to disassemble this garden bed, and then we're going to build it with new wood. And this is the one that's already been built, these two. So these are basically what it's going to look like. We're using Douglas fir wood, just purchased at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's 2 by 8 diameter, so 2 inches this way, 8 inches this way. I find that to be a nice size for garden beds, and that's going to be what the final product looks like. So first thing we have to do is start to disassemble this garden bed. So I have my handy drill, and I'm just going to start taking out the screws. They've been in here a couple years, so sometimes it's more difficult. The garden bed is all taken apart, and all this old wood we'll bring over and either put in the compost or reuse for something else. And we're ready to start building the new garden bed. Now, before I started this process and purchased the wood, I actually went ahead and did this sketch so that I could make sure the sizes of the beds are correct and the spacing between the beds are appropriate for what I want and what the space that I have. So it's really important to take some time to work out your plan before you actually purchase your materials. Like I said, we're using 2 by 8 dimensional cut lumber, which is really easy to come by, and this wood should last me another 6 or 7 years, so that'll be really good. What I did was I have 2 8-foot pieces, and then I cut an 8-foot board down to 32-inch sections, and these are going to be the end caps. And once I put them up against this wood, it's going to end up adding 3 inches on, and so we're going to end up with my 8 by 3 garden size bed. To attach them, I'm using these screws today, and these are called Timberlock screws, and these are outdoor screws, and they're actually quite expensive, but they last a really long time and you can reuse them. I just took these out of the old garden bed. Now I'm going to be reusing them today. So even though they're expensive, they're worth the investment if you want to do that. The other option is to use a different kind of exterior screw. So just, regular from the home improvement store, anything that says exterior would be fine. These are, I can open these. These have these little star tips. I don't know if you can see that on the video, but they work really well for wood. They go in really nicely without having to pilot a hole, as do the Timberlocks, which really saves a lot of time if you don't have to go ahead and pilot a bunch of holes. So we're going to go ahead and start to put this together. But first, so what I did was I laid out my boards. What I'm going to do is make sure that I am attaching the longer piece on the outside of the short board. Doesn't really matter which way you do it, as long as you are consistent with both sides where you're attaching it, and then throughout all your garden beds, if you want them to be all the same size and shape, you want to make sure that you attach that correctly. So I am going to find my drill, which is over here, and I am going to start attaching my screws. Okay, so I'm ready to start screwing together my board. Okay, there's one. Don't necessarily have to build the garden beds in the exact spots where they're going. growing, you can always move them to where they're growing. Okay, so I've got all my screws. I basically put 2 screws into each corner, so I have 8 total screws holding the garden bed together. I don't put any corner posts or anything like that with a garden bed at this size. I usually don't think it's necessary. If you were going much longer, you might want to do a center brace or some corner posts. If you're going much taller, you might want to do that as well, or if you were doing 2 boards stacked up. For this size, I find it just fine to do the 4 pieces with 8 screws. So now what I need to do is get my garden bed into the right position. So I like when a garden is nice and symmetrical and everything is lined up, which is one of the reasons why I'm rebuilding these garden beds, because they weren't originally built that way. So what I've done on my sketch is I decided that there should be a 3-foot gap main aisle of this garden. So I have a piece of wood here that's cut to 3 feet. So as you can see, I need to shimmy this garden bed down a little bit towards the gate, and then I need to make sure, once I have my 3-foot opening, that these beds are nice and even along the edge. Okay, so we have our garden bed all built and in place, and now we're going to work on getting it filled. So as you can see, the old garden bed was a little bit smaller than this new shape, so I'm going to need to add some extra soil to it. But first what I want to do is get these weeds cleared off and some of the old plants and smooth out the existing dirt. So since it's November, we have these old plants that have been growing all season. Instead of pulling them, what I usually do is cut them using a clipper or a saw, leaving those roots in place to biodegrade over the winter time. So I'll go ahead and take those couple bean plants out, and the rest of this is going to be just cleared. I'm going to pull these weeds out so that hopefully I get the roots out and they don't come back next year. Put them in the compost, and then I'll start smoothing out and filling up the garden bed. So there you have it. We have built our raised bed garden. We've leveled it off with soil pretty well. Now what I'll go ahead and do at this time of year is add some compost into this garden bed. Usually 1 to 2 inches is plenty. I've been adding compost to these garden beds every fall for as long as they've been in existence. So if you're building a garden bed from scratch, you might want to go a little heavier on the compost, up to about 50%. The topsoil that I added actually had some compost blended into it, so you want to make sure you get a good quality topsoil if you're adding and building a raised bed. Once I'm done adding the compost and mixing that into the top inch or so and smoothing it out, I'll go ahead and cover it down with some mulch, maybe some shredded up leaves or some straw, and then it's basically winterized at that point. I'll maybe lay something on top so that the leaves don't blow away, and then in the spring I'll come back to this garden bed, remove the mulch, and go ahead and start planting right away. So thanks for watching, and happy gardening.